Usually when we talk about asking for a blessing, there is this underlying assumption of precision, right?
Yeah, like it's a very clean transaction.
Right. It feels very transactional. You go to a vending machine, you put in your coin, you press the button for a soda, and boom, the machine drops the soda right into your hands.
Cash in, product out.
Spot on. It is clean, it is categorized, and it is entirely within our control. But then you step into the actual landscape of divine providence, and suddenly that vending machine is it's totally broken.
Oh, completely broken.
You see answered prayers, you see denied requests, and granted desires that end up hurting, and a whole picture gets incredibly murky. So, welcome to Reformed Thinking. Today we are looking at Charles Spurgeon's sermon on the prayer of Jabez from Chronicles, but we are not doing a broad overview.
No, we're zooming way in.
Yeah, we are dissecting one single, highly specific word from that prayer that explains why the vending machine mentality fails us so miserably, and that word is indeed. Jabez prays, oh, that was bless me indeed. Okay, let's unpack this. What constitutes a blessing indeed as opposed to, a superficial or imaginary one?
The addition of that one little word forces us to just completely reevaluate our baseline assumptions. Because when we ask for a blessing, we typically have a very rigid, prepackaged definition of what that looks like.
We want comfort.
Right. We want comfort, we want resolution, we want an easy path. But investigating this single word strips all of that away. It introduces a reality where the things we assume are curses might actually be our greatest gifts.
Wow.
Yeah, and the things we desperately want might be fatal to our souls. So to figure out the nature of what Jabez is asking for, we have to look at his origins. His background is the key to his prayer here.
Right, because the biblical record tells us he was named Jabez because his mother bore him in sorrow.
Yes, that is his starting point. And yet, he became more honorable than his brethren. So, the source establishes a theological principle right away. Sorrow is the required precursor to gladness.
I see.
Works for Christ that cost the most tears yield the highest honors.
I want to dig into that mechanism.
Yeah.
Why is sorrow the required precursor? Because, we live in a culture that views sorrow as a glitch in the system.
Oh, for sure. We hate it.
Right. If you are sad, if you're struggling, the immediate assumption is that something has gone wrong or that God is angry with you. But here, sorrow is described as a harbinger.
Yes, the harbinger that prepares the ground.
You cannot just skip the sorrow and get to the gladness because the sorrow is the very tool doing the preparation.
It really comes down to what the sorrow accomplishes in the human heart. Natural human expectation insists on a painless progression. We want the easy road. But the divine pattern works on an entirely different axis. Sowing in tears is the prerequisite for a joyful harvest because tears soften the soil of a hardened heart.
That makes a lot of sense.
We see this dynamic constantly. Look at the naming of Benjamin in Genesis.
Oh, yeah. That's a great example.
Right. His mother, dying in childbirth, names him Benoni, which translates to son of my sorrow. That name is an anchor to grief. It's a permanent marker of a terrible day.
But then faith steps in.
Spot on. Faith steps in through his father and renames him Benjamin, son of my right hand. The origin point of agonizing grief is redeemed into a position of high honor and delight.
The sorrow was real, it was physical, but it was the doorway to the honor. There is a fantastic analogy in the source material about a ship delayed at sea. A merchant is waiting for his vessel to return to port, and it is late.
Always a stressful situation.
Right. To the natural mind, a delay means disaster. The ship must be lost or attacked or sunk. But the reality is that the ship is delayed because it is heavy with an excess of cargo. The very thing causing the agonizing wait, the massive amount of freight, means the eventual arrival will be vastly more profitable. The tears and the waiting are the weight of the cargo.
And that excess cargo requires a sturdier vessel. It requires a more patient captain. We are so prone to demanding immediate, light shipments,
Yeah, we want overnight delivery for everything.
Exactly. We want a quick skiff to dart across the water and drop off a tiny package of immediate gratification. But a blessing indeed is a heavy galleon. It rides low in the water.
Yeah.
It takes time to cross the ocean. It battles storms. When it finally arrives, the value of the cargo is staggering.
There's that poetic quote from Cowper the source brings in. The path of sorrow, and that path alone, leads to the place where sorrow is unknown.
It's beautiful, and it challenges our modern obsession with immediate comfort.
It makes me wonder about our modern allergy to difficulty. Think about it. For you listening, how many worthwhile pursuits have you abandoned prematurely simply because you hit a roadblock?
We shed a few tears, we feel some friction, and we immediately assume we must be on the wrong path.
We equate ease with divine favor. But Jabez contradicts that entirely. His devotion was the key to his promotion, and it was born out of intense sorrow. The text even specifies that the honor he enjoyed would not have been worth having if it had not been vigorously contested.
Mm.
But I want to push back on that a bit. This concept of equitably won honor. Can you clarify how Jacob's night of wrestling illustrates that? Because it seems like true honor requires a vigorous contest in prayer, rather than just being handed out as a flattering distinction.
The contest is the point. An honor that is simply handed to you requires no relational friction. It does not alter your nature. If a king hands you a title, you get a new piece of paper, but your character remains untouched.
You are the same person, just with a fancy new name.
Yes, but consider Jacob wrestling in the dirt at Peniel. He spends the entire night in agonizing, physical, desperate struggle with the divine.
And he walks away with a limp.
He walks away with a dislocated hip and a new name, Israel. The struggle itself was the communion. The vigorous contest in prayer changes the one praying.
The honor of the name Israel had massive weight because it was forged in the fire of direct contact with the Most High.
Yes. True honor combines the award of grace with the acknowledgement of service and struggle. It is an active, altering encounter.
So if true honor is forged in a struggle with God, why do we constantly settle for the cheap knockoff? I think it is because human approval is just so much easier to get.
Oh, entirely.
You do not need to wrestle all night in the dirt to get your peers to applaud you. You just have to tell them what they want to hear. And the deep dive shifts here to contrast divine blessing with our craving for human approval. We want the blessing of our parents, our friends, even the gratitude of the public.
We gravitate toward human blessings because they are visible, they are right in front of us, and they are immediate and, they are consolatory.
Yeah, a parent's blessing is a sweet thing.
It is. The gratitude of someone you helped is encouraging. But those human words lack actual authority. Society praises success and condemns adversity based on incredibly shallow metrics. Furthermore, flatterers only praise you for their personal gain. Human approval is fickle.
So fickle.
The critical distinction here is the nature of God's word versus human words. God created the universe with a verbal command. Let there be light is a performative utterance.
Meaning, the speaking of the word creates the reality.
Precisely. Therefore, when God speaks a blessing, it is an effectual, concrete reality. When a human says, I bless you, they are expressing a nice sentiment or a wish they lack the means to fulfill.
The text uses a courtroom analogy that I think clarifies this perfectly. Imagine you are on trial for your life. The stakes are absolute.
Life or death.
The applause of the public is like the verdict of a policeman standing by the door or some random spectator up in the gallery.
Right.
It might feel nice to hear them cheer for you. You might get a rush of dopamine. But their opinion amounts to absolutely nothing regarding your actual freedom. The only verdict that dictates your reality is the sentence of the judge.
And yet, we spend a staggering amount of energy trying to win over the spectators in the gallery.
We really do.
We tailor our lives, our careers, and our public personas to get the policeman by the door to nod in approval. We do this to secure the applause of the crowd, completely ignoring the fact that the judge is watching.
The scales of public approval are entirely different from the balances of the sanctuary.
And this becomes even more dangerous when we factor in flattery. The text brings up the fable of the fox and the crow. The fox praises the crow's beautiful singing voice.
And the crow is not a good singer.
No, the crow sounds terrible, but the fox wants the cheese the crow is holding in its beak.
The flattery is a transaction designed to extract something from you.
Yes.
The text gives this incredibly sharp advice.
Yeah.
Keep flatterers at arm's length while pressing censurers right to your bosom.
Yeah, the people who criticize you to your face are not trying to make a market out of you.
That is such a harsh reality to accept, though.
It is. I think the psychology of self-complacency here is fascinating. We know intellectually that people flatter others to extract value, but when the flattery is directed at us, our critical faculties they shut down.
We eat it up.
We accept exaggerated praise, rationalizing it by thinking, well, maybe it is a bit overstated, but it is exceedingly near the truth.
We love the honey on the tongue, and we completely ignore the trap hidden underneath it. We convince ourselves that the gallery's applause is the judge's verdict. So what does this all mean for you listening right now? Are you currently living for the applause of the courtroom spectators? Are you making life choices based on what the gallery thinks of your performance? Or are you waiting for the judge's verdict, hoping to hear, "Well done, good and faithful servant"?
It's a tough question.
It is. And if human words prove inadequate or fickle, the natural pivot for the human heart is to look for tangible assets. If words will not secure a sense of blessing, maybe material goods will, which leads right into a heavy critique of wealth and fame.
Wealth and fame are the twin pillars of secular salvation.
That's a great way to put it.
We assume that accumulating resources creates a fortress against sorrow. But the argument here is that wealth brings heavy anxieties. It fails you completely when you are sick. When you are lying on a hospital bed, a massive bank account does not ease your physical pain.
No, it doesn't do a thing.
And worse, it makes the pang of death much sharper because you have so much more to leave behind. Fame is shown to be equally hollow. The pursuit of fame brings more pleasure in the chase than it ever does in the possession.
Once you have it, it becomes a burden.
Right, and dead men do not benefit from earthly chatter.
What's fascinating here is the concept of wealth cozening, or deceiving its owner. It is a striking picture. The text describes a person who inherits a massive fortune. They pursue pleasure relentlessly, thinking the money guarantees happiness. But eventually, sport becomes irksome.
The wealth promises freedom but delivers a specialized form of slavery.
Yeah, the lavish food is on the table, but the appetite is completely gone. The musicians are playing, but the ears are deaf to the melody. The external abundance masks an internal starvation.
This is illustrated by the image of the base miser. He sits surrounded by his massive store of gold, griping for more, pining away, and fully believing he is poor.
He is starving in the middle of a grocery store.
Yes. It is a terrifying kind of psychological blindness. And fame receives an equally piercing metaphor. Fame is compared to snow that whitens the ground in the morning.
It looks beautiful.
It does. It covers all the dirt, and it seems so permanent when you wake up, but it completely disappears the moment the heat of the day arrives. It is a windy, mocking blessing. What good is having your name in 1,000 mouths if God rejects you?
The text makes a claim that really requires some thought. It says that if we could see how little a wealthy man actually enjoys, we would pity him rather than envy him. We look at the estates, the investments, the external trappings, and we think, if only I had that, I would be blessed indeed.
We assume the internal reality matches the external display.
But we confuse the scaffolding for the building.
That is a great analogy. The external trappings are just scaffolding. If the internal building is crumbling, the scaffolding does not matter at all.
Right.
This highlights the necessity of asking God for the gold of his favor. If you do not actively seek the gold of divine favor, you will inevitably make idols out of secular investments. You will ask for the husks, fully convinced they are the main course.
Wealth and fame are relatively easy targets for critique, though. Most of us can intellectually agree that money and popularity will not save our souls, even if we still secretly want them. But now the text moves into territory that is much closer to home.
Oh, this part is difficult.
It is. What about universally recognized, completely wholesome goods? Things like physical health and a loving family. The argument is that even these, as wonderful as they are, fall short of being a blessing indeed.
This requires careful theological nuance. Health is described as a massive mercy. It is infinitely better than sickness. To trifle with your health is the madness of folly.
Yeah, we aren't saying health is bad.
Not at all. Yet we must recognize its incredible fragility. A strong, muscular person can be reduced to a skeleton in a matter of weeks by a microscopic virus. And regarding family, the home fireside is beautiful, but every single one of those earthly ties will inevitably be sundered by death.
They are temporary by design.
Yes.
There's a quote here about chronic pain that is so visceral. Your bones are become an almanac in which you note the changes of the weather. Anyone who has lost their bodily autonomy to illness understands the heavy reality of that statement.
Notice how the text handles this, though. It points out that God takes no pleasure in the mere physical legs of a man.
Muscular strength is not an inherent sign of divine favor.
No. In fact, sickness is often utilized as a necessary pruning knife.
Wait, I have a hard time accepting that. Society tells us physical health is the ultimate good. How can we honestly look at someone suffering through a wearisome, agonizing night of pain and call that a fertilizer for the spirit? That borders on offensive to modern ears. We treat bodily autonomy as the highest possible reality.
It is a radical shift from secular thinking, I admit. When you are healthy, the illusion of control is absolute. You wake up, your body does what you tell it to do, and your brain naturally assumes, I am the master of my reality.
Right.
Sickness is a shock to the system because it shatters that illusion. It removes the physical autonomy we use to ignore our vulnerability. Sickness enforces dependence.
That makes sense.
The text provides an anecdote about a sick sister who confessed that she felt closer to God during her severe illness than she ever did when she was healthy.
Oh, wow.
She had such full assurance and joy during her sickness that upon recovering, she almost wished to be ill again just to renew that intense communion.
That is wild to think about.
It is. The pruning knife cuts away the dead wood of our self-sufficiency. The wearisome night forces the soul to look for a dawn that is not of this world.
The logic applied to family is similar. A mother's love or a father's care is wonderful, but those earthly relations must point to a higher reality. God must act as the father. Christ must act as the bridegroom and the brother born for adversity.
If our earthly home becomes our ultimate reality, we miss the point entirely.
The text offers comfort for the widow and the fatherless here, assuring them that all severed relationships are made whole in the Almighty.
Consider your own physical health right now, or your domestic tranquility. Are these good things actually distracting you from your eternal welfare? Are you so comfortable in your earthly home that you have stopped looking for the heavenly one?
A blessing indeed ensures that these temporal gifts are used rightly to glorify God, rather than functioning as substitutes for Him.
Right.
Having taken apart temporal blessings, the deep dive enters its most rigorous theological segment. We were moving from fake earthly blessings to fake spiritual blessings. Imaginary spiritual peace is a deadly delusion.
It's the worst kind of deception.
You might realize money cannot buy happiness, but if you have a false sense of spiritual security, you are in far greater danger.
The source outlines two specific types of people caught in this delusion: the self-righteous Pharisee and the presumptuous, evidenceless believer. Both firmly believe they have God's favor, but both are entirely deceived.
Let's talk about the Pharisee first.
The Pharisee stands in the Lord's house with a quiet conscience because he tithes the odd farthing on mint and cumin. He goes through all the ceremonial motions. He assumes he is the pattern for the whole parish.
The text calls him a mere windbag.
A windbag, yes. His blessing is just his own overweening conceit.
The Pharisee's delusion is based on his own actions. But then there's the other extreme. The person who claims grace but possesses no evidence of it. This person sings, "I do believe, I will believe," but has experienced absolutely no vital change of heart.
They have no actual repentance.
They do not hate the sins they used to love. They think repeating a phrase or getting emotional during a song secures their salvation. But a true blessing requires the inward operation of the Holy Spirit, not just vocal repetition.
To illustrate this presumption, the text brings up the Old Testament historical account of Uzzah touching the Ark of the Covenant.
Oh, this is a heavy story.
Very heavy. Uzzah reached out his hand to steady the ark when the oxen stumbled. To the natural mind, he was doing a good thing. He was protecting a holy object.
Yeah, he's just trying to help.
But he acted presumptuously against strict divine instruction. He assumed his own hands were cleaner than the dirt the ark was about to fall onto. He died on the spot.
Wow.
This is contrasted with the sons of Kohath, who carried the ark rightly, according to the prescribed law, bearing the weight on their shoulders.
Uzzah's death is a stark warning against treating the holy things of God casually. The text mentions people today who base their entire salvation on having a vivid dream or getting emotionally excited during a church service or misapplying a random text they heard in a sermon.
They have an anchor, but it has no fluke.
Right. It has nothing solid to grasp onto in the seabed. They were relying on their own subjective experience rather than the objective, finished work of Jesus. Here's where it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
There is a massive distinction here between the false piece of callousness and genuine full assurance. We often assume that having no doubts means we have great faith.
But the text suggests that some people have no doubts simply because they have no spiritual life in them.
A dead body feels no pain, but that is not a sign of health.
Exactly. Their calmness is just spiritual numbness. They have no heart searching because there's no vital life to prompt the search.
True full assurance is rigorous. It comes from deep heart searching, from hating former sins, from a vital change of mind. Is your assurance based on a solid foundation? Or is it a brazen presumption that claims a right to something it does not actually possess?
It's a question we all need to ask ourselves.
For sure. If imaginary spiritual peace is that dangerous, what about actual answered prayers? This brings us to a concept that completely upends our vending machine mentality. Getting exactly what you ask for might actually be a curse.
We assume an answered prayer is automatic proof of divine favor.
If I ask for something and I get it, God must be pleased with me.
Right, that's the logic. But believers must always qualify their prayers with the phrase, "Not as I will, but as thou wilt." Why? Because God might grant a request in anger.
That is a terrifying thought.
It is. He might give you what you want, but the granting of the request causes immense grief.
The text brings up the historical example of the Israelites in the wilderness. They were tired of manna, so they asked for flesh. They demanded meat.
And God gave them quails.
He gave them precisely what they demanded. But the text notes that while the meat was still in their mouths, the wrath of God fell upon them. The answered prayer was the mechanism of their punishment. They got what they wanted, and it ruined them.
There is a harrowing anecdote shared to drive this home. It is the story of a Puritan minister and a desperate mother. Her little child was near death. The minister prayed earnestly for the child, but he added the caveat, "If it be thy will, save this child."
And the mother interrupted him.
Yeah, she interrupted him right there. She demanded that he prays for the child to live without any ifs or buts. She demanded her will be done, completely ignoring divine wisdom.
And the child lived.
The child lived. But 20 years later, that mother was standing.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, she was standing beneath the Tyburn gallows tree.
Wait, really? The gallows?
Yes. She watched that very same son be executed as a felon.
That is unbelievable.
Getting what she demanded without submitting to divine wisdom resulted in a tragedy far worse than childhood illness. It proves that getting every earthly desire met is not necessarily a sign of a blessing indeed.
In fact, unbroken tranquility can lead to severe spiritual stagnation. The text uses the image of Moab being settled on his lees, rather than being emptied from vessel to vessel. For those unfamiliar with ancient winemaking, wine was left to sit on its lees, the sediment and dregs to ferment.
Right, but if it sat too long without being poured into a new vessel to filter out the dregs, it became thick, syrupy, and ruined.
The pouring from vessel to vessel represents the agitation of trials. The constant disruption prevents the soul from settling into complacency.
The valley of humiliation, with all its friction, is often a far greater blessing than standing comfortably on the mountaintop.
So if you are listening to this, and you are currently distressed by a lack of peace, if your circumstances are constantly changing and agitating you, consider this. That very agitation might be God filtering out your dregs.
It might be making you sick of self and fond of him.
We all want an unruffled life. We all want things to be smooth. But the text gives a stark warning. It is better to go to heaven halt and maimed than to march confidently and comfortably down to hell. Are you willing to be maimed if it means you are blessed indeed?
It's a heavy, heavy reality.
It is. So, to conclude the analysis, the source consolidates its criteria for identifying this true blessing. How should we evaluate our daily work and our trials?
The primary rule is that true service must be built to last. Flashy, rapid religious growth is often completely meaningless.
It's just a show.
Yeah. A true blessing always bears specific marks. They come from Calvary. They are a result of the Spirit's inward operation. They draw the soul closer to God, and they prepare the soul for eternity.
Notice how different these metrics are from human metrics of success.
Radically different. A blessing indeed might humble you. It might strip you of your wealth or your pride. It might even kill the fleshly desires within you.
Spurgeon uses intense agricultural imagery here. He says that even if the harrow goes over your soul and the deep plow cuts into your very heart, leaving you maimed and wounded, if the Spirit of God is holding the tool, it is a blessing indeed.
The text offers a sharp critique of certain religious movements to illustrate this point. It talks about revivalists who pretend to build up a church in a few evenings using patent manures to force rapid, unnatural growth.
Patent manures, yeah.
In agriculture, patent manures might make a plant shoot up quickly, but the plant has no root system to sustain it. In architecture, they build what the text calls a stubble spire, reaching to the heavens. It looks impressive for a moment, but it is just a wooden house.
One spark falls, and the whole thing goes up in smoke, leaving the next worker to sweep away the ashes. The source also uses the phrase, sham compo. Back in the 19th century, compo was a cheap stucco material builders used to make a house look like it was built of solid stone. It is the equivalent of a cheap veneer.
It gives the illusion of structural integrity.
But the frost will eventually cause it to crumble. That is contrasted with the slow, unseen work of laying a single piece of gold or silver masonry. A true builder might only lay one little corner of stone in their entire life, a corner that no one else will ever see or talk about. But because it is made of precious material, it will outlast the stars.
Genuine blessings carry what the text calls the broad arrow. The broad arrow was a literal stamp used by the British Office of Ordnance to mark government property. It meant, this belongs to the crown.
So a blessing with the broad arrow has the immutable stamp of eternity on it.
Yes, if it lacks that eternal mark, it is just sham compo waiting for the frost.
This brings up the concept of the disguise. The text talks about faith snatching the visor, the mask off, a terrifying trial. You are faced with sickness or poverty or the contempt of your peers. The mask looks like a curse. The visor is terrifying. But faith reaches up, pulls off that mask, and reveals the beautiful face of a blessing underneath.
Anything that draws you closer to God is a blessing, regardless of its external appearance. A cross that raises you is better than a golden wall that separates you from the divine.
This has intense practical application. The text specifically mentions Sunday school teachers and local tract distributors. If you are doing the quiet, unglamorous work in your local church, aim for lasting masonry.
Do not be discouraged if you are not building a cathedral.
Right. Build your one piece of the temple with pure motives, and it will stand.
As we synthesize all of this, Spurgeon leaves us with 3 final directives. 3 words to govern our approach to blessings: search, weigh, pray.
Break those down for us.
First, search the origin of your comforts. Are they tokens of grace or just temporal accidents? Second, weigh them. Put your possessions and your peace in the scales of eternity and see if they actually confer grace upon your soul.
And third, pray. Pray that your earthly joy does not intoxicate you. Pray that your sorrow does not make you think hardly of God.
Yeah.
If you have the blessing of God's presence, you are wealthy to all the intents of bliss, even if your bank account is empty. If you lack His presence, you are utterly destitute, no matter how much plenty fills your store.
It alters the entire landscape of how we view our lives.
Which brings us to a final lingering thought. The text quotes a massive statement from Moses. If thy presence go not with me, carry us not up hence.
That's at the core of it all.
Think about that blank check we talked about at the beginning. Look at your most desired, unfulfilled wish right now. The thing you've been begging God for. If God handed it to you today, but His presence refused to accompany it, would you still want it? That is the litmus test for a blessing indeed.